What you're about to witness will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about Hollywood's most powerful figures.
I've been poisoned 3 times.
Now let Diddy out. Free Diddy.
Wow, you think somebody didn't want me to do this interview? Yeah, somebody didn't want me to do this interview. Why are so many people coming down with pneumonia?
I think it's kind of becoming a circus, and all the allegations, and now with everybody explaining like what's happening in the bedroom. I mean, every day it just sounds crazier and crazier and freakier and weirder, right? And I'm like trying to understand, with all this being said, like with Kid Cudi going on and saying everything that happened, but then ended up saying, Cassie played both of us. It's like, where are we trying to go? Are we just trying to like tell all of these crazy stories and then that equals out to sex trafficking? I mean, it's starting to become outrageous. It's a RICO case. It's really only Diddy and maybe one other person. Like, I'm just starting to feel uncomfortable and I'm starting to feel weird about this whole thing.
Well, it was certainly interesting last week when I interviewed this guy who had the pseudonym The Punisher, who was hired, and it was Cassie Ventura. Right, so it was a sort of very interesting interview because Cassie Ventura did all the negotiating, did all the payments, and did all the texting to him. Diddy would sit in the corner of a hotel room naked, and he would watch, with her apparent full consent, this guy come in and have sex with her. And it happened maybe a dozen times over a 2.5-year period. Now, none of that says to me that that is a serious crime. If she is the one that is organizing it all. Now, she is arguing it was coercion and so on. You know all these people very well. You know Cassie Ventura. You know Diddy well.
In a moment that sent shockwaves through an already explosive trial, Ray J rose from his seat in a packed courtroom and delivered a declaration that silenced every person in that room. The words "Free Diddy" echoed off the walls like a battle cry. But this wasn't just about supporting a friend. This was the beginning of revelations that would expose a web of power, manipulation, and alleged attempts on people's lives.
I was just thinking, like, what year are we in? Like, it feels like we're in this vortex of like this dominatrix story about all of these different characters that are coming out and the names and the nicknames. And I mean, it's intense. I think that it's entertaining for sure, and it's definitely press worthy. But at the end of it all, it's like, this is what Diddy is being charged for, and this is what he possibly might serve a lot of jail time for. I don't understand it, and I really want to know where this is all gonna go and where does this lead? Because again, it's weird, it's freaky, like the whole oral thing with the 19 guys and the blisters. I mean, it feels like they're just trying to paint these pictures of Diddy, and I was around Diddy all the way pretty much up until the arrest. And all I got from that when I hung out with Diddy, and this is word to my mom and kids, he's always inspired me to be great. When I left, I felt like I could do more for my business. I felt like I had more power because I wanted to be more vocal in running my companies and call my wife if we were getting into it and send her flowers. I mean, these are all the things he was instilling to me and all of the young guys around that were inspired and look at him as a mentor. So now these private things that happen when we were around and never even got a chance to see this kind of crazy stuff, it just sounds like this was a private, personal thing that was happening, and now it's starting to become it's diabolical.
The courtroom was already electric with tension. Media personnel filled nearly every available seat, their cameras positioned strategically outside the doors, while reporters scribbled frantically in their notepads. The air itself seemed thick with anticipation as spectators whispered among themselves, all eyes fixed on the defense table where Diddy sat under intense scrutiny. Every movement he made was analyzed, every gesture dissected by both the judge and the packed gallery of onlookers. But nothing could have prepared anyone for what happened next.
To me, unless I'm wrong, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you think that there's been a massive overreach here. This is personal behavior between Diddy and Cassie Ventura that we've seen so far, that it doesn't cross the line from where you sit into serious crime under the RICO law, which of course was, intended for mafia members and so on. Do you think that's what we're witnessing here with this case, that this was consensual? It may be freaky, it may be sexually deviant, it may be all these things, but it was apparently consensual behavior and not a crime.
I agree, and there's things that we saw in these videos, they were disturbing, and that's not okay, right? But looking at the crimes that he's being charged for, this is where it starts to go overboard, and it's like whoever was mad at the top was really mad, and I think we're here now, and I think it's a flex, because like, what are they trying to get out of this in this court case? Does everybody that's talking about these stories, do they want to see Puffy rot in jail? Is that what we're here for? Because I just think that that's unfair, and just knowing everybody, it just could have been done a different way, and now it's starting to worry me, and I honestly think that Diddy will get out, and I think that there's nothing here. Right? I think they made their point, whatever they were trying to make. Your point is made.
Out of nowhere, Ray J, who had been sitting quietly among the crowd, suddenly shot to his feet. His voice tore through the muffled atmosphere like a lightning bolt, instantly silencing every conversation and causing heads to whip around in his direction. The collective shock was visible on every face in that courtroom as gasps rippled through the gallery. The judge's reaction was immediate and stern. Her gavel cracked against the bench with a sound that demanded order, but the scene had already spiraled beyond anyone's control.
Whenever they have an addiction to MDMA or the ecstasy, they call it the love drug. So he's been doing this drug for over 20 years. So that's gonna lead his view skewed when it comes to sexual activity. I believe it's helped turn him into a sexual deviant. And what type of man wants to see another man urinate in his wife's mouth? I feel like it's evil. I think his behavior is egregious. And I have a history of using very heinous acts on people like this who participate in this type of lascivious acts. Have you ever noticed how in this industry, people untimely meet their demise as soon as somebody else seems like they're having a problem? Have you ever seen that before?
Well, there was, of course, the case of one of his other ex-girlfriends, Kim Porter, who died of pneumonia at a very young age. You just referenced your own situation with pneumonia that you believe was deliberate poisoning. Do you believe that may be what happened to her?
Jamie Foxx said out of his mouth that his partner handed him an Advil, and after he took that Advil, he woke up 22 days later. That's what he said out of his mouth. I feel like us as a species, I feel like human skepticism has become a virus, because if we don't trust the words of our peers, where are we as a species? Eyewitness testimony and circumstantial evidence is enough to get a person a life sentence in any court on the earth. Why is it that when people are whistleblowing and putting their life and livelihood on the line, they receive so much scrutiny? I don't think that's by chance.
There have been rumors circulating online that Diddy may have poisoned Jamie Foxx, which caused his 2023 hospitalization. In his Netflix show, he compared Combs to the devil in revealing his near-death experience after a brain bleed and stroke. He said, "I say this all the time. I saw the tunnel. I didn't see the light. It was hot in that tunnel. I thought, shit, have I gone to the wrong place? I looked up at the end of a tunnel and I thought I saw the devil saying, come on, or was that Puffy? I'm effing around, but if that was Puffy at a flaming bottle of Johnson," and no, I'm just kidding, I think that you have taken that to be a not too oblique reference to the fact that he's suggesting he may too have been poisoned.
Diddy himself shifted uncomfortably at the defense table, his usually composed demeanor visibly shaken as his hands began to fidget nervously. But then Ray J dropped words that would change everything about this trial. But then came the revelation that transformed this trial from a celebrity scandal into something far more sinister and dangerous.
Because the last time I was scheduled to be in this interview, Randomly, our car gets hit from the side by a blacked out vehicle. No license plate. That's happened 3 times this month so far.
Really?
Somebody didn't want me to do this interview. Yeah, somebody didn't want me to do this interview. You know, I'm somebody where I've had FBI come to my house before and tell me they found a threat against my life.
P. Diddy, this seems like every day the scandal gets bigger and worse for him.
Yeah, it certainly does. And I'm not surprised whatsoever. I mean, I think I was on your show before he got arrested, and I brought up what was going on with him, and because I had read through the lawsuit, and it was just one of those things that was unavoidable because there was so much evidence. I mean, there was picture documentation, there was video documentation. And I also want to be clear that the press and the media and the public at large is shocked by what's happening, but we really are just getting to the beginning of everything.
A lot of things start happening to remove people from the case that are going to strengthen the case for the prosecution. And I feel like we're watching that take place now with one of the male sex worker guys who provided tapes to the feds. He's disappeared. And this is similar to what happened in the Tory Lanez case, where the bodyguard whose DNA was on the weapon, he disappeared.
She and Cassie needed to sway Kid Cudi against telling the cops that Diddy was involved in the alleged break-in. Clark testified, quote, he says, if you guys don't convince him of that, I'll kill all you MFers. But that wasn't the only time that Clark said that she feared for her own life. She claimed Diddy once accused her of stealing diamond jewelry. Said that she suffered through 5 straight days of lie detector tests inside of a gutted, rundown Manhattan office building. She testified the man giving the tests warned her, quote, I'm not getting a good reading. You need to calm down. You're going to be in the East River if I can't get a reading on this.
And the prosecution had alleged in its opening he had staffers who helped him commit crimes that aren't necessarily charged, statute of limitations expired, etc., but that he committed as part of this overall criminal enterprise. Phil, let me start with you on whether the prosecution is making its case.
Well, it sounds like, Megan, they're finally getting into some of the meat of the matter, because up until now, we've heard a lot of emotionally charged testimony. We've heard about domestic violence. We've heard about, third-rate burglaries and things like that, like you were just discussing. But we haven't heard much about how this was some type of criminal enterprise related to, sex trafficking. We're starting to hear now that who these people are that are the other racketeers. You've got other employees, security personnel. And so the government is starting to make its case. They've got a long way to go. But until today, I had a lot of reasonable doubt that things that I was thinking about, because these witnesses all seem to have some degree of kind of affection for Combs, or maybe had affection in the past. And it may be that they all had some kind of an angle, some incentive to testify against him, maybe sour grapes.
Ray J wasn't just making noise for attention. He was about to expose what he claimed were multiple attempts on his life, and the name he was about to drop would send shockwaves through the entertainment industry that are still being felt today. Security had escorted Ray J back to the witness stand, where he sat visibly shaken, but with a resolve that couldn't be broken. The judge, still clearly annoyed by the earlier disruption, banged her gavel again and demanded complete silence. Every whisper ceased as all eyes focused on Ray J, who leaned forward with his voice steady but filled with raw emotion. What came next wasn't just surprising. It changed the entire atmosphere of that courtroom in ways no one could have predicted. Ray J made it crystal clear that his outburst wasn't just about defending Diddy. He was there because someone had allegedly tried to end his life, and he was done staying quiet about it. The gallery immediately tensed as an uncomfortable energy rippled through the crowd. Reporters in the back exchanged stunned glances, their pens moving furiously to capture every single word as the air grew heavier with each passing second. The prosecution appeared caught completely off guard, frowning visibly as they tried to process this unexpected turn of events. Meanwhile, Diddy avoided all eye contact, as if he were desperately willing himself to disappear from the situation entirely. Ray J continued with eyes scanning the entire room, making it clear that the people responsible knew exactly who they were and had been walking around like they had already won some kind of victory. But then Ray J dropped the bombshell that would make headlines around the world. His voice cracked slightly slightly as he spoke the name that hung over the room like a dark thundercloud. Jameis Winston. The reaction was immediate and explosive, with gasps erupting from the audience and someone in the gallery audibly exclaiming in disbelief before the judge once again demanded order. But then Ray J did something that separated his claims from typical courtroom drama and elevated them into the realm of potentially explosive evidence. What he pulled out next would leave even the most skeptical observers questioning everything they thought they knew about this case and the dangerous games being played behind the scenes in Hollywood's elite circles. The tension in the room had reached an almost unbearable peak as the judge instructed Ray J to proceed with his testimony. His earlier accusations had already shaken the courtroom to its core, but now the focus turned entirely to the evidence he claimed to possess. All eyes were fixed on him as he paused, drawing out the moment with a silence so thick that even the faint squeak of someone shifting in their seat seemed amplified throughout the entire space. Ray J cleared his throat and leaned closer to the microphone on the witness stand. The words that came next would be repeated in news outlets across the globe within hours. He had brought receipts, and what followed was nothing short of riveting testimony that would change the trajectory of this entire trial. First, he produced a stack of printed emails, direct communications that he alleged were between himself and associates of Jameis Winston. The language in these messages was cryptic at times, but Ray J pointed to several phrases that sent chills down everyone present. One email allegedly contained the words about ensuring permanent silence if talking continued, and he let the weight of those threatening words hang in the air like a toxic cloud. The courtroom remained utterly still as everyone waited for his next piece of evidence. He then presented phone records that he claimed proved multiple calls from anonymous numbers. According to his testimony, these weren't just idle threats, but specific warnings tied to incidents in his life. One such call, dated only hours before his near-fatal car brake failure, allegedly warned him to watch his back because accidents happen every day. But then came the moment that truly shocked everyone present. Ray J held up a photograph that he said showed tampered brake lines from his vehicle, describing how his mechanic had discovered deliberate damage that wasn't consistent with normal wear and tear. But then something extraordinary happened that would become one of the most analyzed moments in celebrity trial history. As Ray J's accusations cut deeper into the courtroom atmosphere, the man known for his calculated coolness and polished public image began to show cracks that no amount of media training could have prepared him for. Diddy had built his entire career on maintaining an unshakable composure, rarely allowing emotions to break through the carefully constructed facade that had made him one of the most powerful figures in entertainment. But as Jameis Winston's name was spoken aloud and the weight of Ray J's allegations settled over the courtroom like a suffocating blanket, that legendary self-control began to crumble in real time. His initial reaction was as restrained as it was telling. He didn't flinch dramatically or make any sudden movements, but his posture stiffened in a way that anyone watching closely could detect. His left hand, which had remained steady on the tabletop throughout most of the trial proceedings, slowly began to grip the edge of the table with increasing intensity. His jaw remained clenched, his gaze fixed straight ahead in what might have appeared like composure from a distance. But every eye in that room was bouncing between Ray J and Diddy, weighing the words being spoken and attempting to decode the body language that was becoming more telling by the minute. The audience sat frozen in their seats while the jury remained expressionless, having been instructed not to react, though their collective energy was absolutely palpable throughout the space. Diddy refused to meet anyone's gaze, not the jury's, not the gallery's, and certainly not Ray J's. Instead, his head dipped slightly lower as his hand moved to adjust his collar, as if the air around him had suddenly become suffocating. His attorney leaned in, whispering something quickly in his ear, but Diddy gave no response whatsoever, his focus locked on some invisible point on the courtroom floor. But then came the moment that would be replayed countless times across social media platforms. As Ray J described the alleged tampered brakes incident, Diddy's composure broke entirely, and the cracks in his armor became visible to everyone watching. But then legal experts and commentators began raising questions that would shake the very foundation of this prosecution and force everyone to examine whether justice was truly being served or if something far more sinister was at play. The concerns being raised weren't just about legal technicalities. They were about whether an entire case had been constructed on questionable grounds that threatened to set dangerous precedents for future prosecutions. The RICO statute, originally designed to dismantle organized crime syndicates and mafia operations, was now being used in ways that many legal scholars found deeply troubling. What should have been a straightforward examination of alleged criminal behavior was beginning to look like a massive governmental overreach that transformed private consensual activities between adults into federal crimes, carrying decades of prison time. Commentary from those close to the case case suggested that what the prosecution was presenting appeared to be personal behavior between Diddy and his former partner that, while potentially unconventional, didn't cross the threshold into serious criminal territory. The disturbing videos and evidence that had surfaced were undeniably problematic and completely unacceptable from a moral standpoint, but the question remained whether they constituted the type of criminal enterprise that RICO laws were intended to address. Legal observers pointed out that the charges seemed to be driven more by emotion and public outrage than by solid legal foundations. The case was beginning to resemble a circus atmosphere where every allegation, no matter how sensational, was being treated as evidence of a vast criminal conspiracy. The daily revelations about private activities were becoming increasingly bizarre and outrageous, but they weren't necessarily adding up to the serious federal crimes being alleged. The concern among many was that someone at the highest levels of law enforcement had become personally invested in this case in ways that compromised objective justice. The flex of prosecutorial power was becoming obvious to anyone paying attention, raising uncomfortable questions about what the ultimate goal really was. Were prosecutors seeking justice, or were they trying to make an example out of someone who had clearly made powerful enemies? But then the case took another unexpected turn that would force everyone to reconsider not just the charges, but the entire entertainment industry's culture of silence and intimidation. But then a chilling pattern began to emerge that would make even the most skeptical observers question whether there was something far more dangerous happening behind the scenes in Hollywood's elite circles. What started as isolated incidents was beginning to look like a coordinated campaign of silencing and elimination that had been operating in plain sight for years. The entertainment industry has always been notorious for its sudden and unexpected tragedies, but the timing and circumstances surrounding certain health crises were becoming impossible to ignore. Kim Porter, one of Diddy's former partners, had died of pneumonia at what many considered a suspiciously young age. The official cause of death was accepted without much public scrutiny at the time, but in light of recent revelations, people were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about whether her passing was as natural as it appeared. The pattern became even more disturbing when examining other high-profile cases. Jamie Foxx's mysterious hospitalization in 2023 had raised eyebrows throughout the industry, particularly after he revealed details about his near-death experience during his Netflix special. According to Fox himself, he had been given what he thought was a simple pain reliever by someone close to him, only to wake up 22 days later with no memory of what had happened during that time. The comedian's description of his experience was haunting. He spoke of seeing a tunnel but no light, describing intense heat and the terrifying sensation that he might have ended up in the wrong place entirely. His joke about seeing either the devil or Diddy at the end of that tunnel wasn't just comedy. It was a barely veiled accusation that many interpreted as his way of suggesting he too had been deliberately poisoned. The method appeared to be consistent across multiple cases. Victims were allegedly given substances disguised as helpful medications, leading to severe health crises that could easily be dismissed as natural medical emergencies. The beauty of this approach was its deniability. Pneumonia, brain bleeds, and strokes were all conditions that could occur naturally, making it nearly impossible to prove deliberate causation without extensive forensic investigation. But then the most disturbing revelation came when experts began connecting these health emergencies to people who had either spoken out against powerful figures or were preparing to expose damaging information about the industry's inner workings. But then an even more sinister pattern emerged that would expose the lengths to which powerful figures might go to protect themselves from damaging testimony. The systematic removal of key witnesses from high-profile cases wasn't just happening by coincidence. It was becoming a disturbing trend that threatened the very foundations of the justice system itself. The disappearance of crucial witnesses has become an alarming pattern in cases involving entertainment industry elites. One of the most significant losses involved a male companion who had allegedly provided federal authorities with recordings and other evidence that could have been game-changing for the prosecution's case. This individual had reportedly been cooperating fully with investigators, sharing intimate details about private gatherings and activities that could have shed light on the alleged criminal enterprise. But then, without warning or explanation, this key witness simply vanished. No forwarding address, no communication with authorities, and no trace of where he might have gone. The timing was particularly suspicious, occurring just as his testimony was expected to provide crucial corroboration for other witnesses' accounts. His disappearance left a significant gap in the prosecution's evidence chain and raised serious questions about witness protection failures. This pattern wasn't unique to the current case. Legal experts pointed to similarities with the Tory Lanez trial, where a bodyguard whose DNA had been found on the weapon in question also mysteriously disappeared before he could provide testimony. The parallel was too striking to ignore, suggesting a systematic approach to eliminating inconvenient witnesses before they could damage powerful defendants. The implications were staggering. If witnesses were being intimidated, relocated, or worse, it represented a complete breakdown of the judicial system's ability to protect those brave enough to come forward with evidence. The message being sent was clear. Cooperation with authorities in cases involving certain individuals came with potentially life-threatening consequences. Federal authorities claimed they were investigating these disappearances, but their explanations were vague and unsatisfying. The lack of concrete action to locate missing witnesses or provide adequate protection for remaining ones suggested either incompetence or complicity at the highest levels of law enforcement. But then investigators uncovered evidence that suggested these disappearances might not have been voluntary relocations, but something far more permanent and threatening to anyone considering cooperation with authorities. But then the story exploded beyond the confines of the courtroom and transformed into a global cultural phenomenon that would dominate headlines, social media platforms, and public discourse for weeks to come. What had started as a celebrity trial was now reshaping how the entire world viewed power, accountability, and justice in the entertainment industry. The ripple effect of Ray J's testimony was immediate and absolutely colossal in its scope and impact. Within mere hours of his explosive revelations, news headlines were plastering his accusations across every major media outlet in the country and around the globe. Television networks interrupted regular programming to provide breaking news updates, while online publications raced to be the first to analyze every detail of his shocking claims about attempts on his life. Social media platforms erupted with an intensity rarely seen even in today's hyper-connected world. Theories, memes, debates, and heated arguments flooded every platform as millions of users took sides in what was becoming less of a legal proceeding and more of a cultural battleground. The hashtag #FreeDiddy began trending worldwide alongside more speculative ones, like Ray J was right and Winston exposed, creating a digital storm that reached every corner of the internet. What made this media frenzy particularly powerful was how it transcended traditional celebrity gossip and entered the realm of serious social commentary. Fans, critics, casual observers, and industry insiders were all forced to grapple with uncomfortable questions about what they thought they knew about their favorite entertainers and the industry that had shaped popular culture for decades. The public narrative wasn't just centered on Diddy anymore. Ray J's claims had dragged the entire entertainment industry into an unwelcome spotlight, forcing uncomfortable conversations about what else might be lurking beneath the glamorous surface that the public had been sold for years. Late-night talk show hosts, news commentators, and social media influencers all weighed in with their perspectives, creating a cacophony of voices that kept the story alive and growing with each passing day. But then the media attention began to reveal fractures in the entertainment industry's carefully constructed public image that threatened to expose secrets that had been buried for decades. But then the prosecution team faced a crisis that would force them to completely recalibrate their entire approach to a case they thought they had under control. Ray J's bombshell accusations against Jameis Winston hadn't just added another layer to the trial. They had created a legal labyrinth that threatened to derail months of careful preparation and strategic planning. The prosecutors had entered this trial with what they believed was a straightforward strategy: keep the jury focused on the specific charges against Diddy, present evidence of alleged criminal enterprise activities, and secure a conviction based on the strength of their witnesses and documentation. Their case had been methodically constructed around proving that Diddy had orchestrated a systematic pattern of illegal behavior that fell squarely within RICO statute violations. But Ray J's revelation had shifted the dynamics entirely in ways that no one could have anticipated. His accusations against Jameis Winston painted a picture of a much larger conspiracy that extended far beyond what prosecutors had originally outlined in their case. If Winston was indeed orchestrating attempts on witnesses' lives, it suggested a level of organization and desperation that implied the stakes were much higher than anyone had realized. The defense team, meanwhile, found themselves in an unexpectedly advantageous position during their recess discussions. If Ray J's story could divert attention from Diddy's alleged actions and instead focus the jury's attention on this broader conspiracy involving Winston, it could potentially create reasonable doubt about their client's culpability in the original charges. The narrative was shifting from Diddy as the mastermind to Diddy as potentially another victim in a larger web of manipulation and control. Prosecutors now faced mounting pressure to address whether Winston's alleged involvement created legitimate questions about the foundation of their entire case. If witnesses were being threatened or eliminated by outside parties, how much of the testimony against Diddy could be trusted? Were some of the accusations against him actually the result of coercion or manipulation by these same outside forces? The trial that once had a clear trajectory toward either conviction or acquittal was now far messier and more complex than anyone had anticipated. Both legal teams looked visibly aware of just how dramatically the stakes had risen and how unpredictable the outcome had become. But then the implications of these revelations began to extend far beyond the courtroom and into the broader question of how justice could be served, when the very system designed to protect witnesses and ensure fair trials appeared to be under attack. But then the most chilling realization of all began to sink in for everyone following this case. What they were witnessing wasn't just the end of a celebrity trial or the resolution of entertainment industry drama. This was potentially just the opening chapter of revelations that could fundamentally reshape how power operates in Hollywood and expose corruption that reaches into the highest levels of the entertainment establishment. Legal experts and industry insiders were making it abundantly clear that the public was only seeing the tip of an iceberg that extended far deeper into the murky waters of celebrity culture than most people could imagine. The evidence that had emerged so far, shocking as it was, represented merely the beginning of what promised to be a comprehensive examination of how the entertainment industry's most powerful figures had operated behind closed doors for decades. The investigation was expanding in ways that suggested federal authorities were preparing to cast a much wider net than originally anticipated. Sources close to the case indicated that additional witnesses were being interviewed, more evidence was being gathered, and patterns of behavior were being examined that could implicate numerous other high-profile figures who had previously felt insulated from scrutiny by their wealth and influence. What made this particularly significant was the suggestion that this case could serve as a catalyst for victims and witnesses who had previously been too intimidated to come forward. The courage displayed by Ray J and other witnesses in speaking publicly about threats and attempts on their lives was potentially inspiring others who had similar experiences to break their silence and add their voices to what was becoming a chorus of accusations against the industry's power structure. The ripple effects were already being felt throughout Hollywood, with reports of panic among certain circles as people began to wonder whether their own activities and associations might come under federal investigation. The comfortable assumption that wealth and connections could provide protection from legal consequences was being shattered in real time, and the reverberations were creating an atmosphere of uncertainty and fear among those who had the most to lose. Celebrity trials have always had a way of exposing truths that can shake even the largest empires to their foundations, and this case was proving to be no exception. Ray J's shocking claims had thrown a spotlight on the unpredictable and high-stakes world of fame, where even the smallest crack in someone's armor can bring towering reputations crashing down in spectacular fashion. But the story was far from over, and what happened next could alter careers, lives, and the entire entertainment industry landscape in ways that would be felt for generations to come.